This is going to be a bit of a departure from what I normally have on my YouTube channel, which is generally just instructional videos for my students since we're not currently in class. What I'm going to do today is paint this very simple snowman head design on a rock. I went to this because I've been painting rocks with Monrovia rocks and hiding them around the neighborhood, and I found that I was just choosing things that took a little bit too much time, so I came up with this because it's pretty simple. So you're going to need a rock, and I've chosen one that has a bit of a point on the top that I'm going to make into the hat. And you're going to need only 5 colors of acrylic paint. Your white, your black, a blue, you don't want it too light of a blue, kind of a darker blue, a red, and then a yellow. This red is sort of like just a general red. It's an ancient tube of paint from when I was in college, so I'm surprised it still works. So this is all you're going to need, and of course you need paintbrushes and some water. You wouldn't need to draw a preliminary sketch, but I have for this one just so that I can show you what I'm planning to do. If you do want to do a preliminary sketch, just trace around your rock and draw on your paper to give you an idea. It is possible then to transfer this on. I won't do that for this particular design, but if it's more complex, you might want to do that. As you can see, I've got the snowman looking off to the right, so I have room for his little poof ball at the end of his hat, and I have room to add that carrot nose in. By the way, the carrot nose is the hardest part. The rest of it's really pretty simple. I've done my drawing actually with Sharpie, not because I would do that normally, but so that you can see it. I really don't like where I put the mouth entirely, so if I want to change it, I can. It looks too much like a circle right now, so I will adjust that as I go along. I also forgot to mention that you're going to need some lovely glitter. It's going to get everywhere in your house, but it just kind of makes it look a little bit more festive. So glitter is a good addition in this case, but normally I don't like working with it. I'm going to begin by mixing some of my white and my blue together, and I'm going to take the darker blue and put underneath where the hat is going to go. Just going to kind of loosely put it on. I go about, just a little bit beyond where the hat goes, because otherwise, since the rock is round, it's going to look like it's unfinished if you don't put it all the way around. Right now it looks too dark, and that's perfectly fine. That's actually what you want it to look like right now, because it's going to form the shadow underneath that little fuzzy cap. So just put it on there. You can be really loose with it at this point. You're going to come back in, of course, later on and add some white to it. But right now, you're just doing this to give it the sense of shadow. And as you're working with the shadow, you also want to work with the shadow around the head. So I'm going to come along here and add some blue tones that will be the shadow of the head of the snowman. While I'm working with that, then I begin to start adding some whiter tones in there. I don't have very much paint out right now because I'm just beginning, and I don't want to put paint out that's going to dry. So come along here and start adding it into there. It's okay if your rock shows through. Actually, sometimes I like the rock to show through in spots. So right now it's really, really thin. You're going to come around, add some more in there. When it's still wet, you can begin to blend it, and it makes it look more natural for that little shadow. You're going to go on top of it later on with some brighter colors, but right now we're just putting the undercoat on. You can see right now it's kind of sloppy, and that's fine because this is just an undercoat. So this is going to dry a bit, and then I'm going to work back into it. But it's best when you're going to blend your colors to do it when it is wet. Because it's acrylic, it's very forgiving. You can paint right over if you don't like something. I often will put the mouth where I don't like it, and I have to paint over it, so don't worry about that. But you're going to need to let it dry before you can put the final coat on the face. I'm sure you noticed that I erased his eyes and his mouth, and that's just because it's easier to paint the white without having to go around it. And that was just there for reference anyway. So I'm going to let this dry now. I'm going to go back into the white and the blue later on just to add a little bit more accents. But for now, I want it to dry because I'm going to paint the hat now. And that's where you're going to put the glitters. So you have to have everything else completely dry or the glitter is going to get in everything. For the hat, you're going to need your red as your base color. Then you're going to mix it with a little bit of black for your shadows, and then mix the red with a little bit of white for your highlights. And then when it's still very wet, that's when you're going to put the glitter on, and again, it's going to get everywhere. This is just about ready to add the glitter. Interesting thing about rocks is they each take the paint a little bit differently, so this tends to resist for some reason, so it is pooling up in areas, but that's nearly not going to matter because I'm going to cover it all with glitter anyway. So for the glitter, I'm going to make sure that I have something underneath it and that it's nice and wet, so I'm going to have to go back in and reapply just a little bit of paint. So here I go with the glitter. It's okay if it gets on other parts of your rock because everything should be dry. Add more than you think you're going to need. Pat it down just really gently and then shake it off. It should show my shadows. Unfortunately, it is not. I might have to go back into that. That's a little more glitter than it really needed. Well, that's far more glitter than I would normally have added, but it just all stuck really, really well this time. And by the way, a little tip, don't try to blow it off because now I have glitter everywhere. This is going to be fine. It just means that whoever finds it's going to get an extra sparkly snowman. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let it dry. Then I'm going to come back into these fuzzy areas and add them a little bit over the top of the red, and then begin to start adding in the shapes of the face and the scarf, and then finish the nose. To add your detail, you're going to use mostly just the straight white, and then take this and allow your paintbrush to make those little fuzzies just by laying it down in a fashion that allows those little pyramid shapes to sort of stick out. You're going to need to do this over and over again to show your depth. Now here, there's a little bit of shadow, so I'm going to add that shadow back in because it got lost. And just keep putting it on the top so that you can see the different shapes. My glitter is getting everywhere. You can actually let some of it sit so that you see a little bit of thickness to it, and that will add to that effect as well. Just a few little strokes and we've got a furry edge to our cap. Same thing for here. We're going to take it on and let that sit on the top. You don't want the edges to be fat. You want them to be thin so that they look like a little ball of puff. So there you go. It actually works pretty well. Now what I'm going to do is go back in and brighten up the white. As you can see, the Sharpie is beginning to show through because it will do that. It'll kind of turn purple. So I'm going to cover that up really well and add some highlights and shadows here, and then put on the scarf and then finish the face. Most of this will be done time-lapse so you don't have to watch everything so slowly. Two more things to do and then we'll be done. We need to add the carrot in. So for that, you're going to mix a little bit of yellow into the red you already have, and you're going to mix a little bit of white into that orange that you make, and then leave some a little bit darker to add the carrot in. I'm going to add a little bit of texture to the carrot with those other colors. So the darker colors will be the shadows and the lighter colors will be the highlight. And the very last thing I like to do is add just a little highlight into the eyes. I realize that snowmen have coal eyes. There wouldn't be any highlight. but it adds just a little bit more life to your character, so I think it actually adds a nice little touch. Here we have the finished snowman. I forgot to mention that I was going to add in little rosy cheeks, which I just think makes it look a little bit cuter. Once again, I realized that a snowman wouldn't have them. So there you go. It's really quite simple. I hope you give it a try. So all that's left now is to put your signature on the back and then coat it with some sort of a clear coat and take it out to your neighborhood and hide it for somebody to find.